Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us this morning. My name is Buhle Banyoni from Legal&Tax, and thank you again for joining our webinar live this morning. Our topic this morning is money management, where we'll be discussing the importance of budgeting, helping you draw up a budget, showing you some ways to help you stick to a budget, because I think that's actually the hardest part. You know, the expectations might be high, but your execution might fall flat. So we definitely want to empower you and provide you with the resources and the skills to be able to make better financial decisions. We will be looking at the debt counseling process as well as the debt review process, where we'll be looking at some of the requirements as well as the procedures around those two areas. Lastly, we'll be delving into garnishing orders, helping you understand the legalities around that, showing you ways where you can reduce your spending, sharing some money saving tips. So it's definitely going to be a jam-packed session. I don't know if you are familiar with the debt review process, but I have two debt counselors with me that are joining us today that will be breaking down the process for you. Legal&Tax is a financial services provider. We offer support as well as companionship to all our members. We definitely want to be an ally and to help you navigate through life's daily challenges. So firstly, I would like to introduce our lovely debt counselors. I have two ladies joining me today. Welcome to Nombali Keswa, as well as Mukhadi Silubalo. Hi, Nombali, how are you doing this morning?
Hello, I'm good and I'm very excited about this topic and thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome stuff. I think we've lost Mukhadi. Mukhadi, are you there? Mukhadi? Okay, let's try to locate Mukhadi before we kick off. Sorry, let's just wait for Mukhadi. Hopefully she'll be joining us in the next few seconds. Welcome to all our guests this morning. We really appreciate you joining us and, you know, making the time to come and be with us this morning. I appreciate that highly. Mukhadi? Okay, hopefully Mukhadi will make her way back. I'm sure she's having some internet issues, but hopefully she will be joining us soon. But to kick off, we definitely have had a rough year. Looking at the current economic climate and the effects that COVID-19 has had on the year that's passed, a lot of people have found themselves in financial difficulties. It has affected a lot of people's livelihoods. People have lost their jobs. And I think we all have definitely, you know, deemed it necessary to tighten our purse strings, you know, and look at how to better spend our money as well as to manage our expenses. The situation is tight, and I think we could all learn a thing or two when it comes to being more responsible with our money and being savvy with our money. So we definitely want to look at the concept of financial well-being and being financially fit. And Nombali, can you help us understand what the concept of financial wellness or, you know, financial well-being is, and why is it important to an individual to be responsible and to be in good standing with your finances?
Thank you, Bushle. Hello, Legal and Tax companions. Bushle, to answer your question, financial well-being is that sense of security. When we're talking about your finances, it's that feeling that you have enough for you to be able to meet your expenses or all of your needs, right? And it matters because it affects us. It affects us mentally, it affects us physically, and even emotionally. So it's a very, very important part of our lives. And I'm very excited that we'll be sharing some few tips with you for you to be able to be financially fit, especially in times like these. It has been proven that financial budgeting, or rather planning your finances and making sure that you've got savings and you are living within your means, can actually eliminate some stresses that you might have concerning your finances or how you handle your money.
Okay, great. And I mean, now with schools reopening, a lot of parents find themselves in a situation where they need to pay for school fees. They need to, buy their kids' school uniform. And, money is tight. So what are some budgeting strategies or ways that you can advise people in order to be able to make, strategies for these, situations or expenses that may arise?
Thank you, Bushle. I know this is going to sound strange because a lot of people, when they set down a budget, they leave the savings for last. And they actually start with whatever it is that you need, that you want to to spend on before you actually get to the savings part. But when I advise anyone on budgeting, is that your savings are very important and they form a very important part of your budget. So they should actually come first and they should form sort of an essential when it comes to your budgeting. So I'm going to share a strategy on how you can actually save effectively by setting aside an amount of your salary before you actually start putting down your expenses for your budget, right? So in most cases, we would advise our companions that take 10% of what you are earning. So once your salary has gone into your bank account, you have this net salary now. Now, from this net salary, if you take 10% of that amount and set it aside as your savings, you are now left with 90% of your salary. And now you have to live within this 90%. This is going to help you to be better prepared for some expenses that might arise in the future, where you have some savings or a contingency plan for you to be able to cover for those expenses. We want to try and avoid going to banks every time we have unexpected expenses. We want to be better prepared so that when the time comes and our finances are affected, we do have something to fall back on. Secondly, when drawing up your budget, I strongly advise that you separate your expenses at least into two main categories, one of them being essential expenses and the other one being non-essential expenses. So once you've separated your expenses, you are able to better see how you are spending your money and where most of your money is going. And if there's anything that you can cut back on, you are able to then see where you can cut back in terms of your non-essential expenses.
Okay, great. And then in terms,
and then we move to our income. Yes, sorry.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then in terms of setting financial goals, I think that's the biggest mantra at the moment, setting your financial goals for 2021, as well as to have a financial plan. Can you take us through, what you would classify as solid, effective financial goals for the year ahead, and just help us understand, how you need to determine. You did mention between the necessary expenses, and not so necessary. So looking at the difference between your needs and your wants, can you delve into that and help us how we can, structure that according to your goals for the year?
Thank you. Buhle, you remember we spoke about essential as well as non-essential expenses. And it's very important for us to understand what is essential to me as a person and what is non-essential to me as personally, because our budgets differ from person to person. So what is essential to me may not be essential to you. But what we've been picking up as a trend when people are drafting down their budget, under essential expenses, they mostly put DSTV. I know DSTV can be disconnected if you're not paying it, but if you look at it really, is it essential? So we need to be able to determine what is it that we really, really need and what is it that we can live without. Because once we have been disciplined in separating these two expenses, we will be able to budget more effectively and we'll be able to plan our finances going forward. So that is very important. And for you to be able to achieve your goals, one, you need to document each and every goal that you want to achieve. Whether long term, whether short term, you need to put everything down and write it down so that you have a picture of what it is that you want to achieve. Now, as you achieve each and every goal, go back to your list and jot them down or scratch them out one by one so that it gives you that sense of motivation. Because if you accomplish something, it gives you motivation to want to do more. So always go back and review your budget and see where you are at the moment and where you are going so that you've got a clear indication of what is happening financially. We work very hard for our money and it shouldn't just slip out of our pockets just anyhow. We need to be very wise in how we are spending our money and we'll never have financial stresses. Thank you.
All right, nice one. So can you highlight some of the benefits of having a budget? Just take us through what you think is most crucial.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Mohari.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Remember that as Mbali just actually explained about the budget, to say that the budget is a very important essential that one needs in their life, and it has to be like an everyday thing. So in terms of the benefits of the budget, remember, if you clearly actually making an honest budget, it gives you the control over your money. You know exactly what you're doing with your money. It keeps you focused on your financial goals. Still, you have like your short-term goals and your long-term goals. So if you don't have if you don't have a budget, then you wouldn't know exactly what are your goals, what are you intend to in future, or what are you saving for. So it also helps you to improve on your spending habits and savings, because we as people, we tend to just save. We have that thing that when you go to the store, then you can actually buy anything, and that's when you lose focus in terms of exactly what you actually need or what are you spending on. And it also makes you decide as to how you really want your money to work for you. As a person, you shouldn't be working very hard for your money, but you need to make sure that the money that you're working for, it actually work for you. You have a control over your money. So in why budget? The reason for you to budget, it will be it enables you to understand what you can and what you cannot and what you cannot afford, and it will help you to decide and guide you into planning into your short-term and your long-term goals.
Okay, great, Mohari. And can you break down the various areas that you need to include in your personal budget? For example, you mentioned, what is important to spend on and what you should be saving on, different expenses. What are the different categories that should be highlighted in everyone's personal budget?
Okay, we do have the goals, and we have the short-term and the long-term goals. So in terms of the long-term, the short-term goals, the short-term goals are those goals that you can actually achieve within a month or years. So something like if you want to plan for a wedding, so obviously that will not be a decade thing. So it's something that you need to plan for it, and you need to actually make savings for it. And also for emergency funds. So if you don't have an emergency funds, you will end up even making debts out of that because of the emergencies that arise in your life at that particular time. So you always have to do that. So your short-term goals will be, you look into things like that. And when it comes to the long-term goals, so your long-term goals are the things that you know it can take a decade for you, or it can take several years for you to achieve, especially if you want to pay off your home loan. So obviously that you cannot pay off within 2 years after buying it. It will take time for you to actually paid up the mortgage. However, it's something that you also can be able to plan, and it's also achievable. And also, obviously, if you have children, and your children, obviously, you know that they're going to go to university. So instead of you at that time, you take the loan for them, then you are able to actually save for them in advance to make sure that your children get good education. So those are the things that we just need as people. We just need to actually work on them and be able to actually achieve them. It's possible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mohari. Before we carry on, I would just like to mention that at the end of our session, we will be opening the floor for a Q&A session. So to all our guests that are watching us as we progress with the session, if you have any questions, we have a chat option available. You can simply just type in your question or any query. If you have a service query, I would suggest that you contact us directly. You can call our line on 0860 587 587. You can email us on info@legalandtax.co.za. We also have a WhatsApp line available. You can reach us on 071 526 8527. So in the meantime, though, as I mentioned, we have the chat option available. So please do go ahead and type in your question, and we'll get our lovely advisors, qualified debt counselors, by the way, to address your queries at the end of our session. Okay. And then moving right along, Nombali, can you show us or take us through some ways where we can be able to manage our spending habits, and for example, reviewing your monthly bank statement every month to help you stay on track and monitor your expenses? Because sometimes there's been a trend of these small little deductions that come off your accounts every month, or little accounts that you have, and at the end of the day they do tally up. So can you help us navigate through some ways where we can help our members manage their expenses, track and manage their expenses?
Thank you so much. This is a very important part of our lives, how to manage our expenses. The first piece of advice that I'd like to give is that as individuals, we need to understand we are not the same. Our incomes are not the same, so is our responsibilities not the same. So in order for us to be able to live within our means, we first need to match our income with our expenses or the lifestyle that we are living. In order for us to track our spending and see what's happening, like you mentioned, bank statements, that's a very basic indicator of how you are spending your money. Every time you swipe your card, every time you buy airtime on your bank, it'll show on the statement each and every transaction that you are making. And it's important for you at the end of the month, sit down and check, how much have I spent on airtime? Sometimes we spend more than we should be spending on airtime because we want that data to maybe view videos and just for entertainment. And at the end of the day, it does affect your budget, because now, as I've mentioned, that if you were to save 10% of your income, you are now left with this 90% of your income that you need to live within. So if your expenses or the lifestyle that you are living does not meet your income or your earnings, it becomes a problem, because you'll never experience financial freedom. For you to be able to experience true financial freedom and to be financially healthy, you need to be able to limit your expenditure, or how you spend in terms of non-essential expenses. Also, if you look at the documents that, sorry, if you look at how you spend your money in terms of getting receipts, I know with women, they keep receipts in their bags for almost everything that they buy. Those receipts are actually an indication, you bought this dress. Did you really need the dress? You bought this pair of shoes. Did you really need it? Was it in your budget? So each and everything revolves around our finances. And in every walk of life, as we go to work or we go to school, we spend money in everything that we are doing, spend money each and every day in some instances. So it's very, very important that we look at this and really reflect on how am I spending and review our budgets.
Okay, great stuff. And any tips that you can share with us in order to be able to stick to a budget? Because as I said, that is the hardest part. You come up with this brilliant plan, and it's only good if you can actually execute it. So can you share any tips realistically to help people stick to their budget plans?
Okay, yes. So in order for you to stick into your budget, obviously you need to spend more than, you need to spend less than what, yeah, sorry. you not, yeah. Okay, guys. Never spend more than you have, and also stick to the lower credit limits. So write down everything that you need to buy, and make sure that you stick into that list, because immediately you see something that it's not on the list and you tend to buy it, then that's when you actually get out of the budget. So reduce the spending also on the entertainment. Also cut down on the takeaways as well, because if you actually calculate the money that you spend on the takeaways, a child can, like, you can have a child and you find that they want McDonald's. So that 50 rand for McDonald's, if you actually calculate it by a month, if you spend 50 rand a week, or you spend 50 rand probably like in 3 days, so how much do you actually spend on those takeaways in a month, and how much could have been saved in those takeaways, like in that money that you spend on the takeaways? So in order just for you to also be honest in terms of what you're spending on, you need to analyze your spending habits. You need to actually be disciplined in terms of that as well, to say that, okay, is this really what I need or what I want? And create a budgeting plan that will work for you. Each and every household is different, so we have different needs and different wants. So you need to also be honest. You cannot have numberless things, or you cannot create a budget that will actually suit normally and thinking that it will also suit you at the same time. So also develop a support system. So if you know yourself that in most cases you're not disciplined, talk to someone, a close friend, someone that you trust, someone that you know very well, that they can actually keep you intact in terms of doing things, to saying, okay, this is what I'm doing and I'm intending to work on it and to actually be disciplined. So that person can help you be disciplined in terms of that, and just be realistic. So some of the things you will find that obviously you want to save for something that you cannot afford and in a short term. So obviously what someone else can save for in 3 months is not necessarily it's not necessarily that it will be your also reality of saving in 3 months. You can take time in that. So you just need to be honest with yourself and be realistic with that, and you'll be able to actually just get used to the system of saving and also of budgeting, because of now you know exactly what works for you as a person and as an individual.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Mohadi. So, to take away from that, you need to definitely tailor make your own budget plan. It cannot be identical to the next person's. Our lifestyles are different. Our needs and wants are different. So it needs to be tailor made to suit you exclusively. And we offer budgeting guides as well as budgeting plans. So if you do need to put that in place, contact us. We are available online. We're available via telephone. You can WhatsApp us, as I mentioned, and we can be able to put that in place for you. So please do definitely reach out and get your financial goals in order. Okay, cool. Numbali, I would like to understand the terminology around debt counseling and the debt review process. So in my experience, it is always a dreaded outcome. I've heard many that have shared their experiences, some positive, some negative. But can you help us understand what the debt counseling as well as debt review process means, as well as take us through the different procedures and requirements to help someone that is struggling with debt?
Okay. Thank you, Buhle. I think I'm going to dwell a lot on this topic because it's very important. And we've had a lot of our companions coming back to us and saying, listen, I've signed up for debt review, but I really don't understand what I was signing up for. Oh, I thought it was a loan because they mentioned the word consolidation, but is it really a consolidation loan? So I wanted to dwell a lot on this topic so that we can take you step by step of through the process that takes place in order for one to be placed under debt review, because there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that you don't know as a client, or that you don't see, which is the procedures and the processes that the debt counselor and the credit providers would go through before you are actually placed under debt review and the application is sealed. So what debt counseling is, or rather debt review. So debt counseling and debt review, basically it's more or less the same thing, or it's one and the same thing. It is a formal debt restructuring program or process where you are placed under debt review by a registered debt counselor. What they do is they try and negotiate on your behalf in terms of how much you can afford to pay towards your debt. So they try and restructure your debt in order for you to meet your living expenses as well as your obligations on time. So they try and strike a balance in terms of what is it that you can afford to pay towards your debt and how can you better manage your living expenses as well. So it's a mutual ground between the consumer and the credit provider. The first step when going under debt review, you would have a consultation with a debt counselor, whether telephonically or if you can, you have a face-to-face consultation with the consumer. During this stage, then you are able to draft down a budget with the client, and they fill in a document. It is called a Form 16, where they put down their living expenses and all of their personal details for you to see who's the client's dependents and how many dependents the client has, what expenses are they spending on, and also their obligations. Once we receive this application, we then pull out a credit report. Now we take this credit report and we take your living expenses that you've provided, and we try and see, based on your obligations, your income, as well as your expenses, how much is it that you can afford to pay towards your debt. Once we've done an assessment, a comprehensive assessment, and it's obligation free for our companions at Legal&Tax, then we come back to you to say, this is what the assessment is saying. From the installment of maybe 10,000 Rand that you're paying towards all of your debt combined, we can then reduce your installment to 6,000 Rand. Meaning from the income of probably 14,000 Rand per month that you were receiving, and they were taking this 10,000 Rand and you were left with 4,000 Rand for your expenses, which you couldn't manage. Now you'll be left with at least 8,000 Rand, which is the 4,000 Rand that would have been paid over to the obligations. Now, if you accept this new installment and say, I accept the 6,000 Rand, it's going to be more affordable because then I'll be left with 8,000 Rand for myself and for my family. Then the process starts. The first document then we issue is called a 17.1. 17.1 document is notification to the credit providers, advising them that you have now applied for debt review. That document, once it is sent out, the credit provider, on receipt of the document, will then respond to the debt counselor with a certificate of balance. This certificate of balance will contain the interest rate that you are paying on the account. It will contain the installment that you are supposed to be paying, as well as any service fees or credit life insurances that are attached to the agreement that you signed with them. They will also indicate on the COB if they are allowing you to include the account under debt review or exclude. If they say it's excluded, they need to give valid reasons why they are excluding the account on debt review. In most cases, it's because there's already a judgment issued on the debt, or a summons has already been sent out to the consumer and they're in the legal stage, or they're rather proceeding with legal action against the consumer. In this case, the consumer unfortunately cannot include this account unless the credit provider is allowing us to include the account under debt review. So they'll state all of that information on the certificate of balance. Now, once we receive the certificate of balance, it is used solely for us to be able to draft a proposal to the credit providers, because we need this information for us to propose something to them. So when we look at the proposal stage, rather before we get to the proposal stage, there's a second document that we send out. It is called a 17.2. Now the 17.2 is the document that declares you as over indebted. Once this document has been sent out to your credit providers, it means you cannot cancel debt review. The debt counselor has now declared you as over indebted. And you will be listed on the credit bureau. So the NCR system is updated, as well as the credit bureaus is updated of your status of debt review. Now, the reason why we are listing you under debt review is not because we want to blacklist you, or it's not a black listing or a bad listing on your profile, but rather it's a responsible flag that is reflected on your credit profile because you cannot manage at the moment. So a lot of people have misconceptions to say, they've placed me under debt review and now I'm blacklisted, and I wasn't blacklisted before, I could apply for credit. Debt review listing is not a blacklisting, it is a responsible listing. It shows that you saw that you needed help financially and you weren't managing your finances, and you actually went for help. So it's responsible in that sense. It's not the same as a default where you just left the account and it started incurring these arrears and you couldn't pay the account for some reason and you just left it as it was. So it's more responsible, and it's not the same as a blacklisting. So during this time, you are listed until such a time that you have settled the accounts that you placed under debt review. After the 17.2 is issued, we then go over to the proposal stage. During this stage, the debt counselor is now negotiating with the credit providers. So we are saying proposal because we are proposing an installment as well as an interest rate to the credit providers. In most cases, we will try and reduce the interest rates as well that they are charging on each account and see if they'll accept. In some instances, they do accept the lower interest rates. In some instances, they'll tell you to slightly increase it, but it still won't be the same as the contractual interest in most cases. There's very rare cases where you'll still pay contractual interest. And in most cases, it'll be maybe for your home loan or for your vehicle, which are assets. But on personal loans and credit cards and whatnot, we try and negotiate on a lower interest rate so that the term of debt review in itself is not so stretched. Because you can imagine now you are paying an installment, half of what you should be paying towards your debt. And now the term in itself is probably going to be double. But in some cases, it doesn't double up because of the interest rate that we've negotiated on, because the interest rate now becomes lower and you are able to manage your debt much better. Once a proposal is sent out to the credit provider, they have the option to either accept, to reject, or to send a counter offer. In most cases, when they do reject the proposal, they will send us a counter offer to say, yes, I'm rejecting the installment or the interest rate that you are proposing. However, if you were maybe to increase the installment by 100 Rand, I would be in a position to accept your proposal regardless of the lower interest rates. Sometimes they'll come back and say, the installment is fine, but the interest is much lower. From 30%, you are proposing 15%, which is half of what the consumer is paying to us. and the agreement in itself is still new, it's fairly new, the client maybe opened this loan in 6 months ago, so it's not going to benefit us if you were to reduce that much, they'll give you reasons and say, okay, from 30%, we would be in a position to accept 20%. Then the process then starts where we send a new proposal and we speak to you as our client and show you the benefits of you accepting this installment or this interest rate. If you are happy with it, then we send a final proposal to the credit providers and say, we accept the counter offer that you are sending to us, which must be accepted within 10 days or a limited time that the credit provider will set for us. Once it is accepted, they will send us a letter. It is called an acceptance letter. In cases, they will send a provisional acceptance. In some cases, they will send us a final acceptance. But once we receive a final acceptance from the credit provider, we then go over to the court stages of debt counseling. So this is a legal and is a formal process, and there are legal implications to this application. So another thing that they would do is that they would take this proposal and take it to court, or rather get an attorney or appoint an attorney to take the application to court in a form of application proceedings, where they go to court with an application as well as the proposal that we've sent to the credit providers and the acceptance letter to say, this is what we've negotiated with the credit providers and these were the acceptances. The court will then grant an order if they see fit, and if they see that the application is fine, they will grant an order in favor of the application. Now, once this application is granted, there is no going back, because we now have to adhere to what the courts are saying. So if they accept this proposal via the courts and there's a court order granted, our payments must be in line with the granted court order. So it is the responsibility of the consumer to make sure that they now keep up with payments and make sure that they pay these accounts each and every month without fail. Thank you, Buhle.
Thank you, Nombali. I think the biggest thing that you highlighted there is for people to be proactive, when it comes to settling their debt. And don't wish it away, because we've all heard the stories where people are being hounded and chased down by debt collectors. You end up in a situation where you're avoiding phone calls, you're chopping and changing your bank accounts, because you're trying to run away from debit orders. And that's not the way to go about doing things. You need to be proactive. We at Legal&Tax are here to assist you. We are able to negotiate on your behalf with your credit providers and any service provider that you owe money to. We are able to negotiate and to come up with a suitable repayment plan, that will be in line with your needs and your living expenses at the end of the month. It won't be as aggressive, because true, some of the fees and the interest rates, they become ridiculous, and it's almost an infringement, in someone's life where they cannot afford it. But if you don't make the means and the necessary plans and arrangement to structure something that is suitable for you, then it's only going to get worse. So I would advise for you to reach out to us, chat to one of the lovely ladies, and let's sort out your affairs. Let's get you in good standing when it comes to your financial well-being. So thank you for sharing with us, Nombali. And I know that not all debt is bad. Okay, can you highlight what good debt means for an individual and how that can actually benefit you, when it comes to building your credit score, and it puts you in good standing with the credit providers to be able to, purchase a house or a vehicle, start a business, so help us understand the difference between good and bad debt and how that could be actually a good thing for you to have good debt.
Okay, thanks, Buhle. Bad debts are those debts that you can actually do little to actually improve your life and to actually have a positive financial outcome. And the good debts are those debts that you can actually increase your asset worth. So in terms of the good debts are your house, your mortgages or your home loans. So those are the long-term assets that you actually can be able to benefit out of them. If you actually invest into a home loan, you know very well that in 5 years to come or even 10 years to come, then the value of your home loan or your mortgage or your property, perhaps it will be more than what you've actually spent on 5 years ago. So the same applies to your student loan. A student loan as well is taken as a good debt, because with a student loan, if you invest on a child or if you invest in education, that itself is just it's an investment, because of you can do better things with education. You can do better things knowing very well that you have the knowledge from the education. So not necessarily that every debt is actually bad. You actually tend to benefit a lot in terms of other debts that you actually make. So on the bad debts, the examples of the bad debts, those are your clothing. If you have like example, a Truworths account, you go and spend 5,000 rand for clothing. What could have done? What is it that you would have done with the 5,000 rand that you spend on clothing for the account? And remember that 5,000, it comes with interest. So meaning now you no longer owe Truworths 5,000, you owe them more than 5,000. So it means now you have to pay a whole lot of money, the same money that you could have done something with it. And with credit cards as well, we tend to actually overspend. And especially with the food, you buy food with credit cards. The food, you buy them today, by the end of the week it's finished, and you still have a debt for that food. So it doesn't make sense for you to actually have debt for things that you cannot even see them, or you cannot even actually calculate them, or even perhaps to say that I've done this with the money or with the credit card that I've actually are used in terms of that. So we just need to be very careful in terms of our spending, in terms of what is it that we actually need, and what is it that we actually want, and what is it that will actually create you wealth in future. Because of, as people, we cannot live for today. You need to also think for the future, to saying, okay, should I do this? Will I actually gain in terms of what I'm doing at the moment? Because if you think for now, then tomorrow you won't see tomorrow. You actually have a problem in terms of that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mokgadi. And Mokgadi, in your experience working with many various clients, how long is the process? How long can someone expect to be under a debt review process or debt counseling? And how long do you think it would take somebody to clear their name, especially if you've been blacklisted?
Okay, with debt review, the maximum period that you can be under debt review is 5 years. So I normally say to you that you go into a debt review because of the financial difficulties, and which also helps you in terms of the legalities that may come over if you were not paying. So debt review, it actually protects you from the legal actions. So, but at the same time, you don't have to be under debt review for 5 years. Let me just say, like for now, I'm struggling financially. However, after a year, the company or my employer actually decided to give me increase. You can actually top up some more money into the debt review process, so that you are able to actually finish up quicker, and that will help you. So in terms of your debts, obviously you need to work out into your debts, so that you are able to actually pay them off quicker as well. So you need to tackle one, but also when you are tackling one account at the same time, you don't have to forget the other ones. You need to make sure that you draw up a budget. It comes back to a budget again. You draw up a budget, you pay off all the obligations that you have per month. So once you see that there is some money that I'm still left with, and you are able to actually just take one account and tackle it and finish it, and that will help you to actually see exactly what's happening, and you'll be able to finish up your debt quicker. Because if you just wait to say that, okay, I have a personal loan and my installment is 1,000 rand, at the end of the month you still have probably like 2,000 rand lying around, and just to spending it on small things, you could have taken probably half of it, 50% of it, or even like about 25% of that 2,000 rand, and top it up on into another debt that you can actually pay it off. So you just also need to be strategic in terms of paying your debts, and also you just need to be honest as to say that, do I really want to live with these debts, or do I really want to actually pay off my debts and actually be debt free at the same time?
Okay, great. Thanks, Mukhari. And Numbali, can you share with us some ways that we can, put in place in order to get our credit score up there? What sort of tips and strategies can you share with us to achieve as well as to maintain a good credit score?
Thank you, Bushia. In order for you to maintain a good credit score, the first thing is to make sure that your obligations are paid on time. So if your debit order is supposed to go off on the 25th, don't use the money and say, oh, I'll pay it maybe on the 1st of next month because I'll probably have some money next month. Make sure that you stick to the agreement that you have with the credit provider. So paying your obligations on time is one of the major factors that affect your score, whether going up or going down. Each and every month, your score is calculated to see previous months, what have you been doing, your activity in terms of your finances. Also, try and avoid to making too many credit agreements or applications. So even if you're not taking the loan out, but you're busy inquiring with these different banks and checking if you qualify for something, this will also affect your credit score, because it's an indication to the credit bureaus that you are trying to apply for credit, and they don't know if maybe you've been rejected for this credit, or if you are living off of debt, you're trying to take money from Peter to pay Paul. So it's a bad indication. Try to keep at least your credit inquiries or applications to at least 3 inquiries per annum, not more than 3. Once it becomes more than 3, it then affects your score for the year. So it's only the next year where they'll check if you've made less than the 3 inquiries for your score to now go up. But each and every month, your score will go up or will go down based on how you are paying your accounts. Are you paying them on time? If there's defaults, are you handling them? Because if I have a default this month and next month I pay the installment only, that default for last month is still reflecting there. It shows that I'm still in arrears on the account. And as long as the arrears are there, on the credit bureaus, it's not going to show you that it's just one account. It shows as a default. So there's an account that wasn't paid on time, and it affects your credit profile and affects your credit score, because in future when you want to apply for a home loan or a vehicle, these large credit agreements, they look at the patterns. How have you been paying your accounts in the previous maybe 24 months before they can grant you such credit?
Okay, great. And also let's look at some relief options that are available for our members. We've heard of premium holidays being available to alleviate the stress and the financial burden of COVID-19. So how can one of our members qualify for this? Is this still available for them? Can you take us through that, please, Mukhari?
Okay, a premium holiday is a feature that is offered by credit providers, mostly by banks, and it is mostly on the home loans and on your cars. Yes, there was a COVID premium holidays. However, it was for 3 months of the first phase of lockdown. So after that, it was actually not to say that it was cancelled, but you also need to communicate with the bank in terms of that if you're struggling financially or if you have financial difficulties in terms, because the lockdown is still going on and people are still affected by that. Some of them, they're not even like working at the moment, they're still not working. And even some of them, the ones that were supposed to get the UIFs are still not getting that. So you need to communicate with the bank prior to even your debit date, so that they're able to actually go through with you in terms of what is it that they can assist you with. The most important thing is to just communicate with the bank, so that you don't lose your home loan, or you don't lose your asset in terms of that. However, the banks also have the terms and conditions that they actually follow. They have a policy to follow as well in terms of that, as to whether you do qualify for that as well. So especially if probably you did have like the areas before even lockdown, like the first level that we had of lockdown since last year, March, then obviously that will be taken into considerations as well, to seeing as to whether they can trust you, whether they can give you like the premium holiday or what, or for how long they can actually give it to you. But it's best to actually talk to your bank about it. The bank are able to actually assist you in terms of that. Communication is very important if you're having problems in paying up your debts.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mkhari. Now let's delve into the topic of garnishing orders, which is also quite a dreaded word all around. Mkhari, can you help us understand what the terminology means? What is a garnishing order? How is this passed down onto an individual? And take us through some of the legalities around it. Help us to understand what your rights are if a garnishing order is being sort of attached to your salary.
Okay, a garnishing order is a court order that is served by the sheriff. Then they will take it to your employers to actually deduct the money from the employee's salary or wages, so until they can actually get the money that you owe them. So the legalities of it actually starts with having an account. Let me just say, like, I have a personal loan and I haven't been paying it for a while. So instead of me making an arrangement with a particular credit provider, then they keep on calling me, trying to make an arrangement with me. I don't answer them. I don't answer their calls. I block their calls. I don't communicate with them that I'm having difficulties. Then it will escalate. It will escalate to the point whereby they hand you over to the legal departments or the lawyers or collectors company, whereby now you keep on getting calls every time to saying that, okay, you need to make an arrangement. You can even pay. Some of them, they even tell you, you can even pay like 100 rand in order for you to start paying your debt. But most of the time we shy away and run away from that. Then obviously it will escalate. They can send you a letter of demand, and if you still don't respond, because you are given a particular time to actually come back and make an arrangement with them. If you also not responding to that, then they will send you the summons. If you don't, then that's when it will escalate to actually go to court. Then that's when they will get a court order to actually put a judgment on you, or even like garnishing, or to get a garnishing order, so that they are able to force you to actually pay back the money that you owe them. So then that's when it gets to that point. But in order for you to actually not even get to that point, you just need to make an arrangement, because the garnishing order, you cannot cancel it. It stays forever until you have settled the account, unless if there's no longer a salary that they can deduct on, then that's when it stops. But it stays on your salary slip until you can actually settle the account. So it's very important to actually communicate communication is just very important, and communicate with the creditors. Even if you're handed over, don't shy away to actually talk to those collectors company or those lawyers to make an arrangement to saying, look, this is what I'm having at the moment, and this is what I can afford. And don't be forced to actually pay something that you cannot afford. Yes, we know that sometimes the collectors will actually even like force you to pay 500 rand. You know very well that I don't have 500 rand. So that is why most of people, you find that they agree to that arrangement of paying 500 rand, knowing very well that they don't have it, and they end up not paying. So then it escalates from there to saying, okay, we've made an arrangement with you, we've tried with you, and you are not even you are not complying. So now this is the time whereby we actually take this route for you of taking legal actions against you, and also just getting a garnishing order against you.
Okay, great. I think we should open the floor to some questions from our guests. I do have a few. Our first guest would like to know if there is a difference between debt mediation and debt review. Nombali, is there a difference?
Yes, there's definitely a difference. So with debt mediation, you are not listed as a person that's maybe under debt review, but you're rather listed as a slow payer. So there is that difference. And then, but with debt review, because it's a formal process and it goes through the courts, we strongly advise that you rather go that route rather than the mediation route, because you are listed in any case. And with debt review, you enjoy protection of the National Credit Act, where if you are under debt review, your assets cannot be repossessed as long as you keep up with the payments, and the court order that is granted is there to protect you from collectors coming to repossess your assets or coming back at a later stage and say, no, they want more, because the process in itself is formal and it is legal.
Okay, thanks, Nombali. And I have another question here. Is it possible to suspend a debit order either for a vehicle or a home loan in December to allow an individual to go on holiday?
Okay. Okay.
Hey, you know, December time, you need to let loose a little bit. So is it possible to pause on those debit orders for a few weeks, you know, a month or so?
Honestly, Bushe, it's not possible, especially if it's for your holiday. If it's for a valid reason, by all means, be proactive, speak to the credit provider and advise them what's happening. But there's a trend that's happening in December where people are not paying their accounts because they want to enjoy the month of December and then continue in January. But the implications of missing that payment is quite high, because there's interest that you accrue because you missed this payment. There's what we call arrears interest that is added onto the account, apart from the normal interest that you would be charged. Also, in future, when you've got a real problem and you really need to miss that payment and you want to speak to the credit provider, they'll tell you, but you missed payment in December, you know, so it's not advisable that you do that, especially if it's just for a holiday. It's something that you can save up for and then go on your holiday. So it's a definite no-no, and we strongly advise that you don't do that, because they don't take it lightly, especially in December. Credit providers are very aware, because we do miss payments a lot in December.
Okay, great. And lastly, Mohari, we have a question from one of our guests regarding stock files. Is it wise to utilize a stock file as a saving tool? Would you recommend this or advise someone to go ahead and use this in order to save their money?
Yes, look, the stock files can actually help you as well. In most of our people, they actually use stock file, like the different stock file, which can be like a grocery stock file, or it can be a monetary stock file. So depending on that, obviously, it depends on their policies as well, because Stockfile doesn't have the profit. However, it also keeps you disciplined in terms of the saving, because you know every month that this money is not my money, this I can put into a saving. So if you're not able to do that with a bank, then you can be able to do that with with a group of people whereby you know that they will help you to be disciplined in terms of that, and it will help you in future because of that is the money that you've put it away. As well, you also just need to also look into the savings plan with the banks as well, or the financial providers, whereby you know very well that you can be able to gain interest into the savings that you are making. So both different types of savings are very good. Like, it's a positive thing to do Xtockwell as long as it works for you.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for joining us this morning. I have found it very informative. Our chat has been extremely enlightening. I'm sure our guests have also learned a lot and gained a few more tips and, money saving skills. And we as a company provide companionship and support, as I said, to help you navigate through your daily challenges, be it your financial status, any legal matters, tax issues. We have very qualified advisors that are waiting to assist you and to help you to navigate through all of these daily challenges. I would like to thank you, Nombali Keswa, for joining us this morning. Thank you, Mukhadi Silibalo. Thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate it. And as I mentioned in our previous webinar, we will be hosting these webinars on a monthly basis. So it is a monthly series. Obviously, the topics will be different. But yeah, this is a monthly occurrence. So, stay tuned for the next one. We will provide you with details in the few weeks to come. And if you need to get any assistance, if you have any queries or you need to speak to an advisor, please contact us. Our telephone number is 0860 587 587. That's 0860 587 587. You can email info@legalandtax.co.za. We also have a WhatsApp line. You can reach us on 071 526 8527. And once again, to everyone, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. Thank you, ladies. And we'll see you next month with some more riveting topics. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, ladies. Bye.